Hey everybody, it's your host, Diana Chen, and you're listening to an episode of Minihash, a condensed episode of Rehash where we do a deep dive into one focused topic with a past guest. Hope you enjoy. So this is Minihash, which is a new segment of Rehash where we deep dive into one topic with a past guest in a more condensed episode. On this episode, we're talking to Stefen Deleveaux about Oasis Onchain, which is a consumer crypto summit in the Bahamas that had its inaugural conference earlier this year in January. Stefen, you guys might remember, he first appeared on Rehash all the way back in season 2, episode 11, which aired on June 30th, 2022.
Wow.
Almost exactly 2 years ago to this day, which is pretty exciting.
That's nuts.
And in that episode, he shared his knowledge and expertise with all of us on all things DAO governance, tooling, and culture. I believe you were still at Govern at the time, which feels like ages ago. And then you later appeared on another Rehash episode in our 2023 wrap up from December 2023 with Hudson Jameson, Maya Bakhai, and Sirsu, where we did a little recap of the year and gave our 2024 predictions. So I'm really happy to have you back today with us to talk about the newest projects that you've been working on for, would you say, the last year, at least last 6 to 9 months or so?
Yeah, I'd say almost a year.
Almost a year. Well, welcome back. To start, could you just give us an overview about Oasis Onchain? I don't think I did it justice in my little short intro. So give us the overview of what it was, what it is, and how you got the idea for it or how it got started.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess we can go all the way back. And just like you said, people may know me from Govern back when I was working there. And unfortunately, we shut down. And then after that, honestly, after being a broadcast at HeatCC last year, I started to see how much people are talking about consumer crypto and how much people were stepping a bit away from the heavy infra focus and just talking more about design and user interactions and UX. And it was really cool to see, like, one, consumer crypto became its own category. And we actually got to the point where it became a thing, like between, account abstraction, L2 adoption. It's like, things are getting much easier to use now. So it was something that was definitely in the back of my head. Like, I had some really good conversations with, for example, Winnie and LDF about just the small seed of an idea of what a conference in the Bahamas could be. And then I went to Fest, and Fest was like just incredible. The way it was run, the way things came together, but also the topics that were coming together. And they had both the main Fest stage and the Seed Club stage, which were focused on the same topics that I mentioned just now. And at that point, I was like, yeah, I really want to do this. And it's going to look similar to this, basically, like the Fest interaction and the Seed Club side stage. But yeah, that kind of just snowballed and rolled into what Oasis is today. It's funny because it was actually kind of late in the year to do a conference in January, but I was like, screw it, let's do it. Right after Fest, Mashiat hit me up, and that turned into us working together. That's a group called Guava that they started. It's like Mashiat, Estefania, Amira, and they have like their own, it's marketing, but it's also event hosting, and they joined up. So we officially had a team to make this come together. That may have been like September, October at that point. And that became a mad dash to put this whole conference together by January. Hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but it worked out. So what it turned out to be was a decent size, pretty intimate, full-on conference focused on consumer crypto in Nassau, Bahamas. So a number of people came down. We had a decent amount of local Bahamians who came to, who had never really done anything in crypto or interacted with crypto before. And we had the typical talks, panels, things like that. We also had a few activations. And I think that was kind of the, what's the word, flashpoint? I don't know, for people to say, oh, this is what crypto is. Because a large part of it was, I mean, everyone knows FTX was here, which means the blow up and collapse was here. And that kind of caused a lot of, I mean, as you can imagine, like, folks know that I also run the Caribbean Blockchain Alliance, which has been focused on education for the last, like, too long. And when FTX collapsed, it felt like all the work that I'd done in this space was kind of evaporated because people in the Bahamas just stopped trusting anything we were doing because FTX was such a big company and it was like hailed as such a huge deal for the Bahamas itself, that it was kind of like a contagion moment. It spread. So anything surrounding crypto, anything involved in crypto was automatically like, oh, we don't want anything to do with that. And this was just like regular people on the ground. I will say kudos to our government. Even after that, they were still very clear that they wanted to continue interacting with crypto. They still really believed in the ecosystem, in the technology. And even now, like they're continuing to move forward in that arena. Like our regulations are still very good in terms of crypto. Like we don't have a Gary Gensler, and that alone is such a like our regulators are very forward thinking in terms of that. So that just helps things. But on the ground, it was like, yeah, people don't care anymore. So I mean, Oasis was also like, one, we want to kind of reintroduce what crypto is to Bahamians and to the wider Caribbean, in the sense of nothing to do with trading, nothing to do with exchanges, literally just practical things that people can use, which is why the consumer crypto focus was the focus. And then secondly, to show pretty much everyone else to like kind of externally focus and say, well, the Bahamas is still here. We're still very focused on crypto. And this still is one of the best places to do anything in terms of crypto. So it was twofold. And yeah, it was 3 days of just really, really awesome interactions, talks. The people that came together were incredible. It was really special. And I think a lot of like even, you know, future business came out of those interactions. So for me, it was definitely like, let's see what happens. Let's see if this goes well. And it did. And as soon as it did, it was like, okay, I guess we'll do this again.
That's awesome. First of all, kudos to you. Congrats to you and the rest of the team for pulling it together in 3 or 4 months, I think was the timeline. I mean, I've never had to put together a crypto conference, like a whole crypto conference before, but even just planning single events, like a 3-hour event at a crypto conference, I've done that. And that's been a whole lot of work, like way more work than people think. So I can't even imagine putting together a whole crypto conference. Kudos to you guys for pulling that off. It's
Thank
super
you.
inspiring too to hear how all of that came about, like you getting inspired by conferences like Broadcast and FWB, a Seed Club. Can you describe the experiences that you had at those conferences for people who aren't familiar with them that inspired you to be more bullish on consumer crypto? Because consumer crypto, I think, has had its waves of like people being super bullish on it and then it kind of dying off and people not wanting to invest money into consumer crypto. And I feel like you're someone who's held strong through all of these ups and downs and really been dedicated and bullish on consumer crypto all along. So can you sort of like talk about what was it about Broadcast, Seed Club, FWB that made you feel like I want to hold strong to consumer crypto? And then what is it about consumer crypto or what is it about yourself or your thinking that you never really gave up on it like a lot of people did?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think overall my goal or my ethos in the space has always been focus on access and like bringing people in and getting people who aren't in crypto, especially in the Caribbean, to actually interact and use crypto, because the benefits for us are, you know, massive in comparison to the benefits even for like people in the US, for example. In the last 2 years, I was very focused on DAOs just because I think DAOs are awesome. I think they are very important to what we do with this tech. But I also saw DAOs as a really good way for people to come into the space. So for example, in a number of places, access to exchanges is still difficult, at least centralized exchanges. But of course, even with DEXs, like you have to have access to crypto first to use them. So yeah, even on that front, it's like, well, if on-ramps and off-ramps are difficult, then at least DAOs are everywhere. Obviously, DAOs are global. If you're working in a DAO, it could be something you do on the side, or it could be for your regular job. And if you get paid in some kind of crypto or even stable coin, that's your on-ramp automatically. So you leapfrog some of the access issues. So once you have that, and this is just kind of me looking into the potential future, like if you have enough people working in DAOs and receiving crypto for payment, then by default, the ecosystem grows, which means that, you know, eventually more merchants will start accepting crypto, et cetera, et cetera. Didn't quite play out the way I was originally thinking. I still love DAOs. I think DAOs are still important. It's just going to take a lot longer to facilitate these things than we originally expected. Now this consumer crypto resurgence is growing again, mainly because of account abstraction means that you don't have to remember a C phrase, for example. And of course, L2 adoption means things are now cheaper. So just those two things. And I think between broadcast and fest was a big part of that was realizing how far we'd come on that angle. Those two things are like, okay, we can actually make consumer crypto happen for here in the sense of like, you can build practical things that people can use, even if it's just payments, you know. Payments are the original crypto interaction. The space is always making payments easier, always making it more effective and impactful. So even just on that front, it's like, there's still a wide open space and there's still a lot we can do. But for those conferences specifically, I think a lot of it too was just interacting more with designers and artists and just people who are not necessarily only thinking of the infrastructure, but also just how to make these things more accessible and more usable. And then, you know, seeing the people who are building these consumer crypto apps in real time, having conversations with them, seeing how they're thinking through user interactions and bringing people in. And it was a lot more focused on those aspects than I was used to, and I really benefited from it. And I wanted to make sure that that was happening here as well. Because in addition to that, something I was seeing was that as amazing as a lot of these things were, so much of it was still focused on US and Europe, and mainly US interactions, US user base. There are a lot of things that were really cool, but not necessarily impactful for people who really needed access to crypto. So because of that, it's also like, let's do this, but make it a little more geared towards these communities, like global South communities, Caribbean communities, like people who actually need it, who actually really need it, but also in a way that it's easy to use and you don't have to understand how blockchains work to actually use them. So I think that was really what it was at the end of the day.
What do you think the path to success for consumer crypto in the Bahamas, for example, or more widely in the global South, what do you think that pathway or that roadmap looks like?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Like, let's say for builders who aren't here or builders who are maybe, again, in the US or in Europe, 90% of it is literally just coming down and interacting with people and finding out what their needs are, finding out what they actually want to see. That goes such a long way, because something that stuck with me that is 100% true. One of the speakers, Mark Pereira, who's from Trinidad, he said it at Oasis. He was like, Caribbean users are your best users by default, at least to experiment and get feedback from, because if they don't like your product, if they hate your product, they will roast you. Honestly, they will roast you. But one, it helps you understand what the needs are, and it helps you understand like, okay, what I'm building right now, maybe I need to pivot and do this in a different way. And at the same time, if Caribbean users like your product, they will be your most loyal customers, and they will never use anything else. So it's like you get such a strong feedback in such a like dichotomy way at the same time. It's literally the perfect place to test the grounds and just like have people try it out, because all you need to do is have a prototype, bring it to Oasis even, and as people try it out, you will be able to see in real time like, okay, this is actually not good. I need to try a different route. Or I'm really onto something. I don't even have to test with too many people. I just need to be here and like talk to like 5 people, and I will already know if this will be something that I can get revenue from properly and people will use, et cetera, et cetera. So it is, honestly, it's one of the best places to just have a product.
That's amazing. I love that. You don't have to waste very much time. You don't have to do months and months of user testing. Just go down to the Caribbean for a week and talk to a bunch of people there.
You'll know exactly what you need to do.
So when you think about the types of consumer apps that are most beneficial or most impactful for people in the Caribbean, what types of apps are you thinking of? Because I think, you know, I've been hearing a lot of people say in this space that they feel like there's been a lack of innovation or a lack of creativity or just a lack of excitement, and people are getting bored and people are getting tired. When I think of consumer crypto or consumer apps that are at the forefront, really exciting, things that come to mind are, for example, Chipped, that Winnie's building with the chipped nails. I wonder if those are the types of things that people in the Caribbean think about as impactful, or if those are kind of more just like fun, you know, not to downplay at all like Chipped or anything like that. Like, I think that fun experiences like that are quite possibly what's going to onboard the next billion. But from your perspective, for people living in the Caribbean, what do you think are the most impactful types of consumer crypto apps that builders who are listening to this can think about building and bringing to the Caribbean?
Well, there's two things. So first of all, something that we talk about for Oasis is this kind of trifecta of a consumer crypto app. It should be fun, it should be easy to use, and it should be impactful to be really effective at the end of the day in terms of bringing people in and maybe even changing people's lives. Nothing is wrong with apps that don't have all three, but when you do have all three, that's when you're really cooking, basically. And for example, Winnie did ship at Oasis, and we also had Game Wallet, which is run by Eco. They actually did a partnership with a bar at the venue for the conference. You can actually get drink tickets through Beam Wallet and just pay on chain rather than with cash or credit card. That went really well. People loved it. But having both of those there was like you get to see in real time how people are reacting to that, especially people who have never really done anything like that before. People loved it. So it's like, obviously for us, and a big reason why I keep saying solutions in the Caribbean are much more needed than say in the US, because in the US, most people already have access to very easy to use payment apps like Venmo, Cash App, etc. We don't have access to pretty much any of those here. And because of that, there's such a huge opportunity for payment apps. So payment apps for sure. Honestly, anything around access to finance, access to DeFi. I think it's interesting that Uniswap, for example, is focusing a lot more on consumer now, which I think is brilliant because, DeFi is so powerful, obviously still has so much potential. There's still kind of a barrier in terms of people understanding how to interact with them and access them. But if you make those things easier to use and more user-friendly, that could change pretty much everyone's interaction with finance as a whole, and especially places where access to finance is either very low or non-existent, wide open space. And even stuff like gaming. There's no geographic region where nobody plays games, right? This idea of on-chain gaming, which I know is still coming a long way, a lot to do, but that could be really cool. That could be really interesting interactions with people and ways to bring them on-chain. Something that I think is really interesting as well is content creation. We live streamed all of Oasis on Unlonely. I think we were the first conference on Unlonely, which was really dope. So, I mean, even that alone, people who are YouTubers, people who are trying to do content in different ways, you do stuff like that. So I think media is also a really interesting interaction and push.
I am hyper bullish on media too, as everybody listening to this knows. One thing I want to make sure we get a chance to talk about is the ecosystem fund that Oasis just launched in partnership with Think Arbitrum and the Thrive protocol. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, we're really excited about that. I think something we've been talking about for a while, especially after the first Oasis, was obviously we're going to continue this as a conference series, but we don't want to just be a conference series. We also want to build an ecosystem because I think, especially for this region and honestly for global south regions in general, there's still such a need to just do a lot more. There's community building that needs to be done. There's capacity building that needs to be done. There's builder support and interaction that needs to be done. Because a lot of times people are starting from scratch. There's not some already established VC ecosystem where people could just go to for funding. Even grants aren't necessarily readily available. So there's a lot of work to do, honestly. We really want to make sure that we're deeply involved in building and expanding this ecosystem. The Oasis ecosystem itself is something we really want to make happen. And the fund is kind of a central point in that. And this grants program that we're doing with Think Arbitrum, it's kind of the first step or the first phase of that. We have around 75,000 ARB as a pool to give out to builders. We're focused on global self builders, mainly, but not limited to the Caribbean, LATAM, and Africa. So that's our focus currently. We are largely focused on consumer crypto, but again, not limited to consumer crypto. So that could include things around governance, things around public goods, for example, as well as the main focus of consumer crypto. So each grant will be 1,000 to 5,000 ARB. And yeah, we have a Charmverse opened up. So you can kind of apply through there, interact with that portal, and all builders are welcome, pretty much.
Awesome. And where can people find those links and what's the timeline that people have to get their applications in?
Perfect. So it's 2 weeks. If you go to our Twitter page, Oasis Onchain, you can find the Charmverse link through there. After those 2 weeks, we'll of course, go through all the applications and then let the people who were approved know, and then of course go through the distribution process. I think overall we're just really excited to make this happen, and we're going to do a number of, we actually just did a Twitter space this morning. We're going to do another one next week. We're also going to have office hours every Thursday for folks who are interested but don't necessarily know the right way to do it, or just need assistance in either applying or in just carrying out their plans in general. But we're really excited and really hoping to just be able to support people who may be starting from scratch or have been looking for a little bit of funding to actually jumpstart what they're trying to build and haven't been able to. The ecosystem is nascent in so many places and just don't have access to funds in general. So yeah, we're happy that this is happening, and we're going to be like really pushing on this because it is a relatively short program. Like everything will be pretty much, or should be pretty much done by the end of August. This is just a jumpstart for us too, in the sense of we're interacting with builders and see how that goes and how we can continue to expand what this wider ecosystem fund looks like.
Well, it's super awesome, everything that you've done for the Caribbean and the Global South and that you're continuing to do. I'm rooting for you and Oasis, and hopefully I'll be able to make it to the next conference, assuming it's in January again of next year. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, it'll be end of January again. Actually, we just finalized the updated pitch deck, so we're starting to send that around as well. And it'll be end of January. So we could do, maybe could do a rehash episode at Oasis.
I would love that. We set up a little studio for the afternoon at ETH Denver and just recorded 4 episodes back to back. And I would love to do that at Oasis Onchain as well.
That'd be sick.
Do you have any final thoughts for us, Steph, before I let you go, about Oasis, about how people can support Oasis, or anything else that you'd like to tell people about Oasis?
Yeah, for sure. And thinking about the idea of doing like podcast episodes there, I do have to shout out the Crypto Isle group. They run the venue that the conference was at, and it was flawless. Like, it was a gorgeous venue. You look outside and see the ocean, you see boats. You literally can't beat it. So it was amazing. And in terms of,
you've sold me.
It's not a hard sell, to be honest.
Yeah.
If anyone is interested, our website is oasisonchain.xyz. But in terms of support, please check out the Twitter page. Hit up myself or anyone on the team. We're a conference run by sponsorship, so we are actively looking for sponsors and making sure that the value is there for the sponsors as well. Check us out, hit us up. Let's talk about what that looks like.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Steph, for joining and sharing about Oasis Onchain. Everyone go check out oasisonchain.xyz and their Twitter page at Oasis Onchain, and hit them up and offer them some support. If you're looking for more customers and builders in the consumer space, go hit them up. It sounds like this is really one of the best conferences to support. So thanks, Steph. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon.